Welcome to the Generic Tech Support YouTube channel. By watching this channel, you are accepting that the content on this channel is intended for educational purposes only. We strive to provide valuable information to help you enhance your technical understanding. We do not condone the use of pirated software. Please respect local copyright laws and support software developers by using legitimate purchased products. All testing conducted on this channel is done in compliance with the Consumer Review Fairness Act and the United States Fair Use Act under Copyright Law, Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Act. We aim to provide honest reviews, security configuration tricks, tips, and how-tos. While we make every effort to deliver 100% tested solutions, we acknowledge that we don't know everything. If you have additional insights or corrections, please share them in the comments. Like and subscribe to keep up with the latest OS reviews and security tips. Your support helps us continue to provide valuable content. Thank you for being part of our community.
Hey guys, so in today's video we're going to do something a little different. We're going to do a how to change the single language version of Windows to a different language. Now under license, single language versions are licensed for one language. That said, we're only going to use one language, thus not violating any license or requirements. Some of the things that you're going to need to know are the version of the Windows operating system that you're trying to patch, and then you're going to have to, unfortunately, go into the Microsoft Windows catalog and find the associated language package that goes with the actual version of Windows. Now, this will only really work in older versions of Windows. Anything that's like 1909 or newer, they change it to the LPX file. It becomes a little more difficult. This is going to be more towards the 1809 and older versions of Windows 10, Windows 8.1, Windows 8, Windows 7, Windows Vista, and then probably also Windows XP to some extent. Now, much like many of you guys out there, I'm sure, you only speak one language. Whether that's English or another language that this is being translated from. I'm currently speaking English, so if the translation's off, then I'm sorry, but all I do is speak English. However, with that said, I like to experience different platforms, different OSs, and check out different resources, different versions of Windows. And now regional versions of Windows are different than what we get in the United States. And it's very interesting to really dig into regional versions of Windows, whether it's the Japanese edition, the Chinese edition. There's a whole East Asia versioning difference between the US and anywhere else in the country. Sweden gets a different version. There's a Ukraine edition. There's even, I believe, an older version of which was a Russian version of Windows 10. I don't know what's taken place since the war broke out there. I don't know if Microsoft is still releasing product updates or not. I'm not going to get into that. I don't get really into politics on this channel. If I did, I guess it would be a comedy channel. But anyway, the operating systems that I like to really look into are things that are not here, are obscure. And as we've seen in this channel, they're either custom made or they're just obscure operating systems. Now the thing is when you work with an obscure operating system, it's not always in English. And since I only speak English, for me, it's really helpful to see the operating system in the language that I speak. So that way I can really see the differences, the keys, the configuration differences between what we have as a release here and what exists around the world. I do want to reiterate, though, that this video is specifically for educational purposes. Doing this on a licensed copy and not paying for the upgrade to support the licensed language that you're trying to speak is a violation of the licensing terms, which I don't suggest you do. So this video is really only if you want to see something different, you want to experience it, you want to see for yourself what the differences in the operating systems to really help you grow, even from an educational resource, just to know specifically if you got to support somebody in another country as an IT support tech, what the differences of the operating systems are. This would be super helpful for you in order to use the English language to just navigate around the operating system. So on this particular one, what we're going to use is we're going to use the Chinese government edition of Windows 10 as our test bed for our configuration. So you can see how this works. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you have the ISO file somewhere on your local drive. You're also going to need to make sure that you have a decent amount of space. So if the ISO file is like 4 gigs, you probably want at least 12, maybe 16 gigs of free space on that drive. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on Add. We're going to choose Image. And we're going to choose the Chinese ISO edition of our particular build and click Open. Now once we do that, we're going to see the Chinese edition, or Windows 10 Chinese edition. We'll see the G at the end for the Government Edition, or Enterprise G, which is the Enterprise Government Edition for the Chinese version of the Windows 10 operating system. And we're going to right-click on this and choose Load. This is going to cause the actual system to load the ISO file in the background. Okay, so once it's loaded, we're going to see a green light or green dot next to the actual operating system, which is going to indicate that this is loaded in the NT Lite application. And on the left-hand side, we're going to need a bunch of different options here. Now, in order for this to work, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go to Updates first and choose Add and File. And in this particular one, it's one of these three files that will create the actual installation of the English language. Now, you'll notice that it's only going to allow us to load what's associated to the hardware on this machine. So this machine's an x64 machine. It's not an ARM64 and it's not an x86. The ISO file is specifically for an x64 machine. So it's only going to load the language pack that's associated. The other thing you're going to notice is the versioning. So we're going to see 10.0.17134.1. Now that's going to match the 10.0.17134.1 on the right-hand side. If this version number is not the same as this version number, it will not work. The other thing you're going to notice is once this is over here, once we commit it, which will be during the apply process, this will copy itself over here. You're going to see that these are all Chinese based. And then if we scroll down, we're going to see the language pack is Chinese simplified down here. However, once we apply this language pack will now be part of the WIM, or the installation files for the actual Windows operating system. Now to do this, it's really a two-step process. We actually have to apply the language pack first, and then after we apply the language pack, then we have to go back in here and we have to go under the unattended configuration to change the language of the operating system to the correct language. Because if we do it right now, and I'll just show you just for the sake of the video here, if I do it right now, I get the drop down where I could choose the different languages here, but if we go down under the system locale, I believe it is, and I go to change it, it's all going to be in Chinese. So I'm not going to have a way to change the Windows localization process until I load the actual updated language into the system. Once I do that, this will change from the simplified Chinese to English because I had loaded the language pack. So what we'll do first, we're going to just go to Apply. You'll get the option here to create an ISO file, but for the first configuration, when we're actually applying this one update to the system, we're not going to do that. We're not going to make any changes to the system outside of just the one integrated update. Now, if you do want to make another step and you say, all right, well, I don't want to keep all of the other languages because I'm only going to use this English language, then what you could do is you could actually go under Components, under Localization, and under Languages, and uncheck all of the languages except for English and the language that's shipped with the operating system. And then once you do that, you'll just go to Apply and make sure you don't have the Create ISO file selected, and you'll choose Process. And now this is going to go through the process of doing the installation of that single language pack on this particular ISO file. Okay guys, so once that's done applying the changes, we're going to get the option here on the left-hand side to go back to Image. And we're going to see that the image is no longer connected. We're going to see the gray dot. And what we're going to do is we're going to right-click on this thing and go to Load. Okay guys, so once this is loaded, let's just run through what we have done, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the updates first so you could see that our language pack is now installed, which is our English language pack. You're going to notice that the original language pack is still on here. It hasn't been changed. We still have the RPC, or rather PRC handling configuration. Now, this is the optional text-to-speech and the optional speak recognition. It's Cortana's garbage. If you're going to use Cortana, you're going to have to find the version for the language you want to use in Cortana and add that stuff through here. If you're not going to use Cortana, then this doesn't make any difference. You could leave it alone. or whatever language you have, whether it's Chinese or Ukrainian or Russian or whatever it is. You could leave it as it is. You only need to add the language pack associated with whatever language you're trying to add to the system, to your build. Once you have that done, obviously under components, go to your localization, make sure your language is configured to only include the languages that you actually want on the machine. In my case, I just want the US version and the English. I could probably uncheck these. I'm not going to, because the system automatically installed them along with the English and Chinese pack. So at that point, there's really no reason to remove them. I want to cause issues or conflicts with the system, and I still want the system to boot. Right, so we'll just leave that alone. Now we're going to go down to the unintended configuration. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the top left here. I'm going to choose Enable. And we're going to go back to where we were before, which was the input locale. And you'll notice that now when we click the drop down, everything is in English. And the reason why is because we loaded the language that we speak into the configuration. So now the configuration knows that we want to use English. So basically it'll allow us now to modify this to add what we want to do this. Now since we want to use EN/US for everything, and we want to use the United States configuration, what we're going to specifically look for in here is United States. Should actually just be US, yeah. So it's 0409. That's the default code value for English United States. And then we're going to do the same thing for this. We're going to look specifically for English US. So you should find EN/US listed here somewhere. It's right there. And we're going to do that for all of the language settings. And we're going to see Setup UI Language. So we're going to make sure that's EN/US as well. So now we have all of this configured for our EN/US. However, we want to set the Windows localization up. So we want Windows to load the EN/US, or the United States version of the English language. So that way we could see, well, we could speak it, we could read it, so we know what we actually got going on here. So we're going to go back in here again. We're going to choose English. And then again under here for English. And then again under here for English. All right, so we got that all set. Now, obviously, if you know what time zone you're in and you want to make the modification for your time zone here too, you could do that as well. And then once you have that all configured, we're just going to reset that. Once we have that all configured, where we have our language configured where we want it to be, so US, we want the EN/US version. At that point, we're going to go back to Apply, but this time we're going to click the little checkbox to create an ISO file. And we're going to need to name the ISO file something recognizable. So we're just going to call it the Chinese English Long-Term Support Government version 3. We'll click Save, and then we'll set the label to the same thing and click OK, and then click Process. Okay, so once this finishes processing and it creates the ISO file, you could use that ISO file now to install your operating system with the language you speak. And what that'll allow you to do then is to, even on single language versions, have the language you speak on that operating system, and then you can use the DISM commands to switch between the built-in language and the language you speak. And while you may decide that later that you want to switch back to the other language as the default, you could do that. If you want to continue to use the English language as the default, you could do that too. But what that gives you the ability to do is to really learn these operating systems, these regional OSs that are so much different than what we have in the US. If you just want to see what other people get to use and experience, this is a great way to do it, and a great way to teach yourself different operating systems and versions. Let me know down in the comments if this helps, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this short video, and like and subscribe for more content, and thanks for sticking around.